Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday evening to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there tonight. Had yourselves a fantastic Wednesday, and I hope everyone has been having a great week out there so far. Thank y'all for taking time out your night to hear about some weather. We're going to speak on winter weather. There's one storm that we are watching that's no longer really a signal. This is a system that is forecast to happen. It's just trying to narrow down those details, figure out who's going to see winter weather, the snow, or who's just going to see rain. And then there's more so a time frame, I guess you could call it a storm signal, that I'm watching as we get between like February 17th through the 20th. I'm watching that time frame also for something, but the models are definitely everywhere. For example, the GFS is much different than like the European and the Canadian with that time frame that I'm watching. I'm going to compare everything in this video, get very detailed with you folks, kind of nerd out with you guys a little bit like I always do, and really show you guys kind of compare and contrast model guidance and all that good stuff that we typically do. So with that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Whew. The comments on social media over the last week or so have been pretty brutal. Not all the comments have been nasty necessarily, but there's just been a lot of backhanded comments, a lot of sarcastic comments, and some of them have just been flat out rude. I delete a lot of them, so if you're wondering, Mitch, I never see them. It's because I delete them. And this is how I do things, guys, for you people who even care or want to care. I'll give somebody like 1 or 2 times of posting rude comments. If they do it a second or third time, I'll be honest, that's when I just kind of block you off the channel. We don't need the negative energy on the channel. We don't. The last thing that I'm going to do is match, kind of a rude comment with another rude comment, because that's just not who I want to be. And even though it does, bother me, because naturally I am human, at the same time, it's just the nature of what I do. So, it hasn't just been on YouTube, it's been on social media too. I think people just need some snow, to be honest with you. I think that if we could get a big winter storm that a lot of people, I think if we can get some snow for these people that have not seen it, I think that it'll turn that frown upside down. But of course, we got to get that to happen. So with that being said, if you folks have anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's talk about what's going on out there right now. There is some snow flying around in areas of the northern plains, Montana, North Dakota, and we continue to get a lot of moisture in California. But nothing too crazy like we've seen over the last several days in California. The middle of the country, there is just kind of this area of light to moderate rain kind of flying through the central and southern plains. And guys, I'll speak on this mainly tomorrow morning. There is a tornado risk tomorrow for the Midwest. We'll have to watch for some low top supercells. We'll speak a little bit on that tomorrow morning. Not going to speak on it in this evening's video, but it's all because of this low pressure. It's going to kind of meander around, kind of fly more so east-northeast, and then create an environment that could support some cold core setup kind of storms. And we could get some kind of what we call cold core tornadoes, and it's very possible to happen tomorrow. We'll talk more on that in tomorrow morning's video. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, you do have ongoing winter storm warnings up in Montana, winter weather advisories in the purple. Those winter storm warnings are in the pink. And then, the Rockies continue to get a good bit of snow out here, but this system really isn't totally unusual by any means. Nothing you guys, aren't used to in the winter, that's for sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by looking at the European, then we'll go and look at the GFS, and we'll kind of start off by looking at the central U.S., and then we'll go to the eastern U.S., okay? So we're starting this off around Sunday evening, right? We got some snow in Colorado and New Mexico, and as we get this into Sunday morning, check out the snow in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, areas of central and southern Kansas. And listen, the National Weather Services in these areas are already discussing this. They're already talking about it. You got 1,003 millibar low. That's the European is trying to show in Texas around Sunday morning. And you kind of keep this going. You're getting into Monday afternoon. You can see the snow flying around in northern Oklahoma. Even central Oklahoma is starting to get very close to Oklahoma City. This will be some wet snow. What's going to happen with this? We're not 100% sure, but most model guidance like the idea of something like this happening. And you continue to keep this going. We're getting into our Sunday evening. Could get some snow up here in kind of northwest Arkansas. Watch out Fayetteville, southwest Missouri, maybe around the Springfield region. And then look at the back end snow. I mean, you're definitely snowing at this point Sunday evening, this coming Sunday evening in Oklahoma City. Tulsa could be a quick hitting winter weather event. Is it big enough to call a winter storm? I don't think so. But we got to watch this. We do. But you kind of keep this going. And the European says as we get into overnight Sunday, check out the snow moving into central Missouri, south central Missouri, all rain for the Boot Hill initially. A little bit of rain switches to snow a little bit further east in northern Arkansas. And then as we're waking up Monday morning, check out a little bit of snow flying around in St. Louis, a little bit of snow trying to, I'm not at a point where I can call this a forecast. This is still kind of comparing model guidance, but we're watching. At the same time, if you kind of watch this low, it's very steadily deepening, which means the storm is strengthening. Precipitation is probably getting more intense. We get into Monday about midday, and we'll stop it here for the central U.S. And you got a moderate snow event for a very kind of skinny area. It's not a huge area, making its way through southern Illinois, central and southern Indiana. We'll stop it right there. Now, what does the GFS show for this time frame? Okay, for the central U.S. Same thing, we'll start off Saturday evening. Some snow flying around eastern Colorado, and then we get into Sunday morning. It's a little bit more warmer. Okay? Just more so rain in the panhandle of Texas, some snow flying around in the panhandle of Oklahoma, and then it gets some snow into Texas. The evolution of this is a little bit different. Sunday afternoon, got snow flying around like Amarillo, Woodward, Oklahoma. Dodge City, snow's flying around Sunday afternoon. It's raining initially in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And then you could switch to some heavy wet snow, maybe sometime Sunday in Oklahoma City to Tulsa. The evolution of this is a little bit different. It's a little bit warmer in general, meaning more rains further north. You got to get a little bit further north to get into that snow. But, you start to get into Monday morning, the 12th, and you got a corridor of some moderate to heavy snow kind of making its way through central Missouri. Even southeast Kansas could get some snow, and then you kind of keep this going. If you notice the difference here, this is Monday evening. I don't know if you can tell the difference, let's go back to Monday evening here. First off, the Euro is a little bit quicker, but has snow a little bit further south. You look at the GFS, a little bit slower, and it has rain where it's showing snow with this system on the Euro. And then on the GFS, it has snow a little bit further north, almost getting snow up to Chicago. So it has this corridor of kind of moderate snow and central sections of Illinois, and then more so northern Indiana. And we'll kind of stop it right there. Okay, so what about the eastern U.S.? And we're going to go back here, and then we're going to flip it to here. Okay, what about the eastern U.S.? Well, let's back this up a little bit to right here. We're going to kind of start off where we left off. This is around Monday midday, the 12th. Okay, got a couple things going on here. First off, you already got a pretty broad system, pretty large system moving in. I don't think there'll be necessarily 3 low pressures, but you got cold air kind of coming down. Cold air is not in place with this storm system for most of the Northeast. For like the interior Northeast, you got enough cold air in place. But for like the I-95 corridor, you don't have cold air in place with this. You really don't. So the Europeans showing, hey, this backside area could be some snow. But then as we move it into like Monday evening, right, 988 millibar low just off the shoreline of Long Island. This is all rain for the I-95 corridor. But it has a pretty significant winter storm inland, even showing some icing. For my folks in the mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva, even southeast like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City, up to Boston. Initially, well, I think the further south you get into those areas I just mentioned, it's going to stay all rain. But maybe up to New York City, Boston, you got to watch out later in the life of this storm. And as we get to the wee hours of the morning, Tuesday morning, still raining in New York City. But look at this moderate to heavy snow right here. And, the Euro says, hey, you stay mostly rain in Boston, but then you switch to some snow at the very end of this. And then this could turn to a significant event for Maine and then eventually Atlantic Canada. Okay, so in a nutshell, the Euro is just flat out further inland. Okay, it cuts. So let's go to the GFS. What does the GFS show? Well, here it comes. Monday evening, it's a little bit slower. All right, and I think this helps. I think this allows more cold air to kind of work in faster. But you got a 996 millibar low. This is all rain for West Virginia. The GFS is wanting to give snow, a winter weather event for Cleveland, maybe Detroit, not a forecast. We're starting to get into Tuesday morning. And check it out, 991 millibar low in southern New Jersey. Heavy, heavy snow just inland, a little bit further snow creeping in further southeast than PA. Heavy snow in the northern PA. Excuse me. New York City, southern New England, snow flying around. And then we get into Tuesday midday, 987 millibar low. And you're just cold enough that the GFS is coming in with a much more substantial winter storm for areas closer to the I-95 corridor. And I mean, check this out. This is Tuesday afternoon. You got this would be your first blockbuster winter storm for southern New England, the New York City area of the winter if this was to come, if this was to happen. Okay. So you kind of keep this going, still snowing like crazy in Boston Tuesday evening, and then it heads on out. So we compare both of those. What does Mitch think's going to happen? I would favor more of the Euro right now. I would. And you ask why. And my reasoning is literally purely driven off the fact that that's been the more common scenario this winter. And I just think that when you're betting against cold air not being in place, I think that you're basically betting against your forecast being wrong. And I think and I'm speaking more so of the I-95 corridor. If you're hoping for snow from New York City to Boston with this, I think Boston's going to get some regardless. But if you're, betting for a storm that's going to be all winter weather, snow, and you're a winter weather fan, I wouldn't bet for that. But it could happen. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic, things like that, I don't think this is your storm. I absolutely do not. But you kind of look at what we were talking about this morning if you tuned in, and there's our vigorous piece of northern stream energy. There's our southern stream energy. This is our northern stream energy. And you kind of see what happens here, and it's a whiff. And you're thinking, well, Mitch, you showed it this morning, and it connected. Well, it doesn't connect on the GFS. It doesn't. It lags behind the northern stream energy, but this southern stream energy is so juiced up, so strong that it does the work for it. And it still provides a pretty substantial winter storm if something like the GFS was to happen. And the European is a whiff too. It's just further inland. The European, it's a closer. If you look at the European as far as energy with this, there's the energy right here. And it kind of connects it right into there. But in general, it's still a whiff between both areas of energy. So what about as far as snowfall with this? We'll look at this in 24-hour periods, right? So you're going to see snowfall accumulations kind of disappear in one area and then reappear in others. And here it comes. There's that snow signal for like Denver, the Front Range, central and eastern Colorado. And then here comes the signal moving into areas of New Mexico, the panhandle of Texas. Look at the signal into Oklahoma of a few inches. It's the European ensemble. Got some snow signal here in southern sections of Kansas. And then look far northwest Arkansas. Moving into the southern and central areas of Missouri. And then it kind of loosens up a little bit once you get into the Midwest, but you still get a signal into early next week. Okay? And then what about the GFS ensemble for this? And it's kind of around the same thing. The GFS ensemble is always a lot more aggressive with snow. Okay, so I would take a few inches off this, but it likes the idea of right into here. It loves this area right in here, and it kind of favors some of the same regions, but a little bit like a tick north on the GFS ensemble, which matches up with the GFS operational run that I just showed you. And then just like the European ensemble, it kind of drops off in Illinois, Indiana, and then it goes on to re-strengthen for the Northeast. So what about the Northeast? And we take a look at the European ensemble. Let's back it up. Let's not give away the goodies before we get to it. And here's the signal, not only for the Northeast, but here's the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes region. You got a 1 to 2 inch snowfall mean early next week. We'll nail down the timing when you get a couple days closer to it. But there's your snowfall signal for the Ohio Valley. That's not in forecast period, but watch how it dramatically increases once you get into the Northeast. This is a pretty solid signal this far out, telling us there's a chance for a substantial winter storm somewhere in this area. But if you notice, I-95 corridor being right in here, it favors further inland regions. And it really begins to get excited once you get into Maine and Atlantic Canada. And then you look at the GFS ensemble, and we go to the eastern U.S., back this up a little bit. Let's see if the GFS ensemble matches its operational run. And there's the signal for the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. And then we get into the Northeast. And it is a little bit further south comparing it to the European ensemble. But in general, I would say the GFS ensemble is still north of its operational run. So it really, I think this favors, I do not think this even favors Boston as a big time winter storm. I think you could get some winter weather off this, but I don't think this is that winter storm that slams like DC to, well, I would say like Philadelphia to New York City to Boston. I don't think that's this one. And I could be wrong, but that's me being conservative with this. And that's my take on it right now. As we move forward, and we're going to move past that and now talk about this time frame that I'm watching. So the blues on your screen is lower pressure and indicates storminess and the potential for below average temperatures. The yellows, the oranges, the reds you see on your screen, that indicates ridging, above average temperatures, and more stable conditions. Okay, so there's that big area of low pressure right over the eastern U.S., which is that area we just talked about. Okay, that's going to be our storm signal in early next week, and there it is. It's clear as day right there. And then this moves on out, but what happens, it doesn't necessarily move out. You still get this huge area of low pressure. We call this a 50-50 low. This gets anchored up into somewhere in Atlantic Canada, somewhere in the Northeast, whether it's Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. You're getting what we call a 50-50 low here. We talked about this about a week or so ago when we were talking about another storm signal. At the same time, ridge building all the way up to Alaska, and you see this area right in here of blue, that's lower pressure showing up from our Pacific jet, which gets extended into our southern stream. So what do we got going on here? As we start to get, if you notice, we're getting close to the 16th. We're getting about 9-10 days out. Tall ridge building up into this region right in here. So you got kind of two things going on here. Well, you got more than two things, honestly. You got lower pressure showing up in here and a more consolidated area of lower pressure right here. You get what you call a 50-50 low somewhere in here, and that's an ugly L. Okay, and then we're getting a ridge building up to Alaska. Okay, this is dislodging cold air south. At the same time, this 50-50 low is helping because remember, a flow around low pressure in the northern hemisphere goes like this. So this is helping to kind of pull down some cold air down to here. And then what we watch for is, hey, how cold is the air right in here? Are we going to get some sort of a low pressure right in here? Okay, does this track into that cold air getting tossed down potentially right in here? And what's going to happen right into this area and once we get into the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th? Are we going to have some sort of storm system for the Mid-South? I mean, heck, even the South-Central U.S.? Are we going to have some sort of storm signal for the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, maybe even the Northeast? Okay, and you kind of keep this in motion, and you can see this highlighted area of more lower pressure. What's our cold air source when this lower pressure moves in? It's a big question. So if we look at the European and the model guidance from this, what is it going to show us? Well, we kind of move past this storm signal right here, which is, I got to stop calling it a signal, the storm system that's going to happen. It's just trying to figure out what, and it heads on out early next week. We get all the way into Valentine's Day, the 14th. All right, the country's pretty quiet except the Northern Rockies. All right, and what you watch for here is, this is around next Thursday or Friday. You see this green showing up here. You see that 540 line right in here. That's cold air diving down. And we watch to see, and this is only going to go out 10 days. But it looks like you got a bomb waiting to go off right here for winter weather. You got cold air diving down, right? I mean, it's literally in the process of diving down at the end of the Euro. It's still coming down. And then you got this massive area of low pressure developing down here in the western Gulf of Mexico and over Texas. In fact, you already got moisture spreading in. If you were to keep this run going, say, another day or two, one or two things would happen. One, this would keep on going and turn into a big winter storm for like the Mid-South and maybe even areas of the Mid-Atlantic, maybe even areas of the Southeast. Or two, the cold air would be coming down so intense, get all this back off your screen, that it would actually suppress this moisture and shunt it back this way. That's the only two things that can happen in this situation, because this cold air on the Euro at least is coming down pretty fast and aggressive. So what about the GFS? Watch how different the GFS is. But I'm going to compare the current run of the GFS with a run 6 hours ago, which was the 12Z. This is telling you how flip-floppy the GFS is being. This is the latest run of the GFS. Okay, we're starting to get into the 16th. It's already getting this moisture out the Gulf around the 16th. And look how far north the cold air is compared to the Euro. Much different. So you compare this. Let's go back to the European model, which is probably going to take us to the, yeah, I knew it was going to do that. And you compare this, right? Let's take it all the way around here. Let's take it to right here. So this is next Friday afternoon. And then you compare it with the current GFS run. See, look what that looks like. All right. Compare it with the GFS run around this time frame. And you see how that 540 line's way up here? Cold air is being delayed big time on this. And so what happens because of that, you get a big time system that's going to cut. And there's no cold air whatsoever to work with. And so this thing just turns around and cuts and then runs in the cold air for the Northeast. And heck, it just doesn't get the job done. Now, if you keep the GFS going, it finally does try to bring some cold air in. But in general, the entire GFS run is trash for winter weather. But if you turn around and you look at the one from earlier this afternoon, it's totally different. Okay, there goes that winter storm heading on off. Same thing, there's the Gulf moisture bubbling up, right? Cold air coming down. It's still more delayed compared to the Euro. The Euro already has the cold air like way down here. The GFS still way up here. But it's a lot of cold air waiting to be tapped into. So the moisture is able to get going. It's not being suppressed by a cold high. And this system's heading in, and then the cold air crashes on top of it. And there you go. I mean, you're getting like just an intense high pressure coming down. I mean, you're getting snow down here in New Mexico, Texas, and then this huge amped up low is running right into this cold air. Big time winter storm showing up for Tennessee, the Kentucky, the southern and central apps, turns into a big winter storm for the mid-Atlantic. And even after that, look what it does. It dives cold air down. Then it wants to drop winter weather all the way down in South Georgia and South Carolina. You compare all this, and then you compare it with that. It's totally different, right? So we're still getting wild swings. Now, I will tell you, I'll throw bones to a Canadian model. The Canadian model favors the European, okay? You go all the way to the very end of the run. Let's take it right here. There it is. The Canadian model's got such an intense push of cold air that it's having a hard time getting this moisture out the Gulf. And there's a lot of moisture waiting to be tapped into. But you got an intense push of cold air from the Canadian and the Euro. So with this, the second time frame I'm watching, it's basically a battle between the Canadian and Euro versus the GFS. And if you ask me, which one would you choose, Mitch? I would say, I don't know. I wouldn't, the GFS isn't as bad as people make it out to be. And I'm not just going to favor the more wintry scenario just because I love winter weather. I keep what I want out of my forecast. I take risk and I take, and I make predictions, and I think that's what some of the backlash has been on with my social media platforms. But, I'm not here just to jump on here and show you some model guidance and, just head on out like a fart in the wind. That's not what I do. If I did that, heck, I would give you my logins to my weather subscription information and just let y'all figure it out yourselves. I come on here and I try to explain the model guidance, why it's showing what it's showing, and just try to break it down for you folks because I really enjoy talking about it. But I like to throw my own twist into things too, kind of give my predictions based off what Mitch knows. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm good to get off my soapbox a little, grow on my soapbox a little bit. But, you look at the European ensemble and just look at pure precipitation and get into that time frame that I'm watching, the 16th, 17th. Here comes the 17th. Here's this area of moisture from the European ensemble. You see that 540 line, that 0 degrees Celsius line right in here? That's a loft, okay, 850 millibars, 32-degree line. That's, a mile in the atmosphere. That's a great reading point when you're trying to figure out if the temperatures are cold enough for winter weather. And if you notice that, that line's diving down into the deep south, the Carolinas, so is this moisture going to pull north into that? We don't know. There's a signal there for moisture. So if you look at the European ensemble from this, the signal's pretty weak, and it continues to be weak. So, there's a signal there, as you can tell. Looks like a cold air damming signal to me. But for now, it's kind of toned down. It's not very loud. I think there's something to watch for here, but it's not very loud. And you look at the GFS ensemble, and then here comes the signal. And I hadn't even looked at this yet, so I don't even know what it's going to show. And yeah, there it is. There it is. See how it pops up? And who knows, guys? Just, and this is getting into the 18th. This could be skewed by 1 or 2 runs. And in fact, we can actually look at it and see if it is on the fly. But there's your signal right there. Let's see if it's skewed. It probably is. I would not be surprised one bit. And let's take a look at it. Let's look at some of these members off the GFS ensemble. So, yeah, I mean, there's just one run showing a substantial winter storm for Georgia and South Carolina. There's kind of one right there too. But, there is some hits for the Carolinas. There's, but, in general, the time period, and this only goes out to the 19th, so there could be more action behind this. But, it's just a time frame to watch. Okay, it really is. And I think that there could be some cold air nearby. It's just trying to figure out if, where the precipitation is going to be. So, you look in the wrap up the precipitation part of this video, you look at the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook. It was issued today, and it does show below average precipitation possibilities for these regions right in here. But, that could change. People have mentioned in the comments these are not reliable, and I would somewhat agree because they change daily. I wouldn't disagree with that. But they're just kind of guidance for us to look at. And then you got a chance for above average precipitation down here in the south. We can try to get some cold air, which is what this shows here. We could get something. And Brad Panovich in Charlotte made a great video this morning. It was just cut and dry, only lasted 10 minutes. And he made a very good point that, I'm going to point out on this too. Just because you see, for example, this blue right in here, this blue shading right here means there's a 60 to 70% chance of below average temperatures for like the Carolinas up through the Mid-Atlantic, the I-95 corridor. That doesn't mean there's a 60 to 70% chance of temperatures that are 20 degrees below average. Yeah, think a below average day could be if your average temperature for any given day, like in late to mid-late February, is 57 degrees, and the low is only 52, that's considered a below average day. So it's not any given temperature point. It's just saying, hey, there's a chance of below average temperatures. So just keep that in mind. And I'll admit I need to do a better job of reiterating that. That's why I'm doing it here. But in general, it looks like after we get to around Valentine's Day, it looks like below average temperatures settle in for the southeast areas, the mid-Atlantic and the south. And, they kind of hang around. And, it might warm up for the south central U.S. again, but if you're wondering what these anomalies are, these are, temperatures that in Fahrenheit that are, 5-10 degrees below average for mid-February standards. Could be highs depending on your location. That could mean highs in the 30s. It could be highs in the low 50s. Just depends on where you live. But if you look at the area around the southeast around that time frame I'm watching, the 18th, 19th, look how below average these temperatures are. You start to get in the green. You start to get the, 10 to 15 degrees below average. So that's some stuff you watch for, right? So, but you kind of keep this going all the way through the end of the run, and you go all the way to the morning of the 22nd, below average temperatures still showing up, guys. And then, you look at the European extended from this, and folks, and this is in Celsius. Let's go to Fahrenheit. And folks, it just continues. It might moderate some here or there, but you get into March, below average temperatures just dominating, through. So I think it's going to be a delayed start to spring. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and I'll have you an update in the morning.